Are you a U.S. citizen and you had a child abroad and you want to get them a U.S. passport, proof of their U.S. citizenship, but you don't know where to start? Well, the CRBA may be the best option for you. Today I'll be going through the requirements, what you need to do, and all the details in between. I am U.S. Immigration Attorney Lillian Chukwurah, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. What is CRBA? It's the Consular Report of Birth Abroad. This is specifically for U.S. citizens that had children abroad and that child is under the age of 18 and you want to get them this CRBA so that they have proof of their U.S. citizenship. And with that, you can get them a passport so that they can travel to the U.S. or anywhere else that U.S. passports can take them. For you to give your child citizenship, when they're not born in the U.S., there's 3 requirements that you have to meet. 1, the child must still be under the age of 18. 2, you or one of the parents must be a U.S. citizen at the time the child was born. Okay? You, the U.S. citizen parent, have to have physical presence in the U.S. Now, depending on your marital status and the immigration status of the other parent, that's going to determine how much physical presence you actually need in order to be able to do this CRBA for your child. The first requirement, as I said, is that the child must be under the age of 18. So once they turn 18, CRBA is no longer an option. They do have other options, but CRBA won't be that option for them. If your child is over the age of 18 and they meet these requirements that I'll be talking about, you may want to look at other options for them, which I'll be covering in future videos. The second requirement is that one of the parents has to be a U.S. citizen at the time the child was born, not after. At the time the child was born, was the parent, at least one of the parents, a U.S. citizen? If the answer is yes, then you move on to the next step. The third requirement is the physical presence requirement. It breaks down this way. If the parents are married to each other and both of them are U.S. citizens at the time of the child's birth, they can show physical presence by showing that either one of them lived in the U.S. at some point in their life. That's it. That's how they meet the physical presence requirement. Now, if the parents are married to each other, but only one of them is a U.S. citizen, the U.S. citizen has to show that they have had 5 years of physical presence in the U.S. And 2 of those years has to be after they turned 14 years old. If the parents are not married to each other and the mother is the U.S. citizen, we need to look at the date of birth of the child because that's going to determine what physical presence requirement the mother has. If the child was born before June 11, 2017, the mother only has to show 1 year of physical presence in the U.S. If the child was born after June 11, 2017, the mother has to show 5 years of physical presence in the U.S. The parents are unmarried and the father is the U.S. citizen. Well, their physical presence requirement is 5 years, just like mothers when the child was born on or after June 11, 2017. This is a big deal because before June 11, 2017, unwed mothers and unwed fathers had completely different requirements. Fathers had 5 years requirement and mothers had 1 year. There was a whole lawsuit about why should fathers be treated differently when it comes to the physical presence requirement than mothers. So, as of June 11, 2017, they have to be treated equally. So unmarried mothers and unmarried fathers, now their physical presence requirement is 5 years. As long as the child was born on or after June 11, 2017, mother has to have 5 years of physical presence, okay? If they were born before that, then mother only has to show 1 year of physical presence. You can see how that is unfair to the unmarried fathers. So this lawsuit basically made it equal. For unmarried fathers, they have to show 2 additional things. One, they have to provide a statement saying that they will provide financial support for the child until they turn 18 years old. And secondly, they have to show that they legitimize their parentage, that they have legitimized the child. This can be done through an acknowledgement of paternity, which is just a statement saying, I acknowledge this is my child and I will provide for them until they're 18. Or there may be a court order that says this person is the father, and that is also acceptable here. This requirement is understandably only for unmarried fathers, not unmarried mothers, because the mother would be the one giving birth and it's clear that maternity is established. But for fathers, sometimes paternity is not established and there needs to be a DNA test or things of that nature to establish the paternity. Even if you acknowledge paternity, the embassy may still require you to do a DNA test as the unmarried father. And that is just a requirement you need to be aware of and know that that may happen. By the way, if you are finding value from this video, please go ahead and hit the like button. It just lets me know what you are liking and what I should do more of. Now let's get back into it. Now let's talk about the documents you need for proving CRBA, right? Proving that your child actually qualifies for this. First, you want to show that you are a U.S. citizen, right? Either both you and your spouse or both parents are U.S. citizens, but you need to show that at least one parent is a U.S. citizen. This can be done with your birth certificate if you were born in the U.S., a U.S. passport, certificate of naturalization, certificate of citizenship. If you yourself also got a CRBA, that can also be used to show your citizenship. The next thing is you want to include the birth certificate for the child showing that you are listed there as a parent. If you are married at the time of the child's birth, you need to include a copy of your marriage certificate. Even if the person you're married to is not the mother of the child, they may still want that marriage certificate. So make sure that you have it ready to go. And then finally, you want to provide proof of your physical presence, right? Now let's talk about what kind of documents you can use to show physical presence. Whether you need to show physical presence for at some point in your life, physical presence for a year, physical presence for 5 years, you can use these documents to show physical presence. So this can be your W-2s, your tax returns, your school transcripts, your employment records, rent receipts, lease, utility bills, bank statements, medical records. If you were in the military service, your U.S. passport with stamps showing you going in and out of the U.S., those can be used as well. So just know though, the stamps in your passport show you being in and out of the U.S., but having a U.S. passport in and of itself is not proof of your physical presence. All right. Just like having a U.S. driver's license in of itself is not proof of your physical presence. It's just proof that at some point you were in the U.S., but it doesn't really tell them how long you were in the U.S. for. Having mortgage and insurance policies also do not show that you were physically in the U.S. So rent receipts, leases, utility bills, those are better proof of your physical presence than a mortgage, because you can be anywhere in the world and be paying your mortgage, right? But if you're paying a lease, typically you're living there. And if you have rental receipts, it means that you've been paying for that lease, okay? Your academic records, your employment records are great because it shows that you were physically here going to school or going to work. Your wages and tax statements, so your W-2s, also show that you've been physically in the U.S., working in the U.S. as well. So those are really important, that you have documentation showing your physical presence in the U.S. Like I said, you can also use medical records, bank statements, credit card statements, because guess what? If you're physically in the US and using your bank account to pay for things, it will show. If you're using your card, it will show where you used your card. It will show, the things you were buying, where it will give enough picture of you physically being in the US. And just know, if you're outside of the US using your card, it typically will have a notation that you were outside of the US. So that's why bank statements and credit card statements are helpful, because again, if you're using it if you're using it going to Walmart, swiping your card, it typically shows the location that the card was used at. If you're taking money out of the ATM, it shows the location the money is being taken out of. So those are very helpful things to use to show your physical presence. Because again, this is the important thing, is that physical presence, especially if you have been out of the US a lot, since you've been a US citizen going back and forth, you want to show that physical presence. You want to be able to prove that 5 years or 1 year of physical presence. Now, let's talk about the actual process. How do you actually apply for the CRBA? Well, for most people, you want to start with the embassy where your child lives. Each embassy has their own requirement. The Department of State, which oversees all the embassies, is trying to standardize this process, but there's still differences between one embassy and the other. So you want to make sure that you're following the procedure for your particular embassy. Most of them now, the applications are done online. So you want to start there. You create an account, you start the CRBA form, and it will ask questions about the child, you, the US citizen, the other parent, if they're a US citizen as well, you include all of that. And then it will ask you all your times of physical presence in the US. And again, depending on what your requirement is, you will need to show physical presence for all of that time frame. You typically have to put the address of where you lived and how long you were there, and if you're in and out, you may want to disclose that as well, so that way you are able to then upload documents showing that. Okay, so they really want to move this process along quickly and get this US citizen child proof of their citizenship. All right, so you start online, you fill out the forms, you upload whatever documents you have. If you do not have documents, you can bring those to the interview, okay? It's not a requirement to upload the documents, it's just recommended, all right? And then after you've submitted the application, now you will schedule the interview. In some countries, you can schedule the interview online. So Mexico, we just did one a month ago. So we were able to just schedule the interview on the website and have my client attend their interview. Whereas a place like Uganda, they do not allow the appointment to be scheduled online. We had to email the embassy. After completing the CRBA online, we had to email the embassy, let them know that we've completed the CRBA online with the case number, and they scheduled the interview for us. And now we can move forward with the interview preparations. So it's really important that you know what your embassy requires. And remember, this is the embassy where the child will go to the interview. All right. So either you, the US citizen parent, is going with the child, or their non-US citizen parent is going with the child. Either way, a parent needs to go with the child. All right. If the US citizen parent is not going to the interview with the child, there is additional forms that you may need to fill out to give permission, especially if you're also applying for a US passport at the same time. You do need to give permission for the embassy to issue that passport for the child. And then once you have your interview date, you just make sure you have all your documents ready to go. Attend the interview. Officer may ask some few questions and then approve the CRBA, and you can be on your way. Wait for that passport and the CRBA to be produced. So the CRBA is a certificate. Like, it's a legit certificate that shows that the child is a US citizen, and then they can get their passport. If they ever lose their passport, they can use that CRBA to get a new one. All right. So Treat it like you would a birth certificate. Treat it like you would your passport. Keep it in a safe place, because if you need a replacement, you need to go through the embassy again to get a replacement, and you don't want that. And that is the process to get CRBA for your child that was not born in the US but is a US citizen at birth. If you would like help with the CRBA process, because like I said, it can get complicated depending on what embassy, what documents you can provide, all of that. If you want to take that off your plate and let us handle it for you, you can schedule a strategy session with me by going to my website, lillylegal.com, or by calling my office at 508-443-1788.